Liftoff. This is the Open Global Mind community call on February 13th, 2025. We are in check-in mode today. And I think everybody on the call has been through check-in before. I'll step through what we do real quick. In check-in mode, I do not control the flow so much unless something borks. So step in whenever you want to, either by raising your Zoom hand and forming a queue and then stepping in the order of the queue, or just if nobody has their hand up, just jumping in. Pauses are great during check-in, so feel free to take a beat and give us all a moment to absorb whatever the last person said. Only go once during check-in, wait until everybody has checked in. And once we've all checked in, we'll switch into regular conversation mode. But we haven't done a check-in for a while, it seems. And we're currently in the mode where we do one check-in a month. So usually the first call of the month should be check-in, but last week we went into the current situation. Doug C likes us to check in by thinking about what is the most important thing we could be doing right now, or a question similar to that. Feel free to go there. That would be a very interesting way to check in. And fascinating. Gil, I'll figure that out in just a second. And I managed to mess up the passwords to my Zoom by changing. I tried to create a different private Zoom so that I wouldn't have overlaps of people dropping in. And then it turns out I changed the master Zoom somehow, and then I changed it back, and that's the new link. And I don't know what's going on. I need to go take a tutorial on how to manage Zoom passwords. Eve, I was just explaining that we're in check-in mode, which I think you're familiar with. So we're just going to go one at a time. Whenever anybody feels like talking, I will not be playing director I will not be facilitating that part of the call. And then please don't get into conversation during check-in mode. Just hold your thoughts. Also, we don't use the chat during check-in mode. It's a chat-free zone. You're welcome to pour stuff into the chat once everybody has checked in. With that, I will mute myself, try to solve Gil's puzzle, and we can listen for whoever wants to go first.
Well, too often, talk first and talk too much. But I had a number of good things to share and a few bad things to share, in addition to the really big global bad things that are going on. Sort of starting in my house and building out to the globe. I am an optimist, but I am becoming increasingly convinced that American manufacturing and services to consumers have gone to the last and final stage of in-shitification. We bought this house a year and a half ago. We were on travel. Apparently, they did not insulate the house very well, even though it's 20 years old. And one of the plastic pipes that was close to the edge of the house burst. Luckily, it was in a overhanging bay window unit, so the water slowly dripped out, creating a very impressive icicle. And when we came back, one of our neighbors pointed out that we might have a problem. And we did. And it was only a $1,500 problem when you added up the cost of cutting into the wall and having two plumbers come out and say, well, that's 15 feet in the air, and I really don't do that. So that was the small thing. While we had the plumbing HVAC guys out here, we had them consider the strange noises coming from our 20-year-old furnace and our 15-year-old AC unit. We have two furnaces and two AC units. And maybe it wasn't the right thing to do, but we just decided to spend $30,000 to get all 4 units replaced. And they're in the garage right now, and you might hear them. But it's so frustrating to hear the repair guys go, well, yeah, they used to last 40 years, or if you were lucky, and certainly they were built to go 30 years. And I said, well, my furnace in my old house was, that was a 25-year lifetime. And he said, oh, no, these are disposable items now. That was the line that I'll remember. On top of that, and part of this is government regulations. They're changing, and good government regulations to stop CFCs from destroying our global environment. But they're running out of things that can be used as refrigerants that don't destroy the ozone. And so now they're starting to move into a new phase with a new refrigerant, which hasn't been well tested, is somewhat flammable. Who knows if it's carcinogenic? Um, so it's so frustrating that things are. I'm sounding like an old guy, and I am 65. It just seemed things were so much simpler, and things got fixed once, and you didn't have to fix them 5 times in the course of 20 years. And so I'm I knew we were going to have to do the furnace repair and the air conditioning replacement. Wasn't planning to do it this soon, but we've had occasions when we haven't been able to have air conditioning on the hottest day of the year, and figured we'd just get it all done once. The other frustration is just the information asymmetry that's involved in these negotiations. I think you've all been through that, whether you're buying a car or having a remodeling project. You have no idea what a good deal is and what the best equipment is. You're just such. I mean, I hate being in that situation where all the leverage is on the other side. So that's all the problems inside my house. Um, the next phase is really exciting. Um, in the last 4 weeks, we have been to San Juan, Puerto Rico, Colorado Springs, Colorado. I visited my folks in Olympia, Washington, just to help my dad celebrate his 91st birthday. And then I was down in Rancho Mirage, where my wife works 2 months of the year. And while she was hard at work at Sunnylands, I got to go to the Rancho Mirage Writers Festival, which is one of the 2 or 3 most interesting writers festival, along with the Library of Congress Book Festival, and some really interesting conversations. Tim Miller was there from the Bulwark. Karl Rove was arguing with Tim Miller. John Meacham, Bill Gates, uh, uh, Kearns Goodwin. I mean, it was really a fascinating, mind-expanding experience. Although everybody in the room was at least my age, they had all but 5% had the same skin tone. And interestingly, about 80% of them were women and many widows. It's a very expensive event. We got guest tickets. So that was fun. But going beyond to the next phase, I'm getting very frustrated with my work on domestic digital policy because it's clear that it doesn't it doesn't matter what analysis we do, it doesn't matter what options we prepare. It's all about the soundbite. It's all about us versus them. Yesterday, there was a spectacularly lively and somewhat fulfilling 5-hour conference that Jim Jordan convened in the House of Representatives Judiciary Committee. The topic was the censorship industrial complex. And they're still upset that Musk was kicked off of, that Trump was kicked off of Twitter, and that after the January 6th fiasco, they still think that they have the right to flood every social platform with as much crap and Russian propaganda as they wish. They don't understand the difference between content moderation to make a service better for the customers who want a better spam-free service and censorship by government. And yet they were sitting there harping about this. It was the 8th hearing they've done on this. to say that we're for free speech and the Democrats want to censor everything. It was extraordinary. But what's most extraordinary is the Democrats have heard these arguments so many times. They were perfectly prepared to just nail these guys and point out how hypocritical they are, how they're in cahoots with the Russians, how while they're saying they're free speech, their president is saying he's going to put 60 Minutes out of business and he's going to suspend the broadcast licenses of PBS and NPR and MSNBC. It's just this. My head explodes every time somebody over on the other side opens their mouth. And Jim Jordan is, as you probably know, one of the dumbest people in the Senate or in the House. There are dumber people in the Senate, unfortunately. But that's what I'm hammering my head against. I'm working very hard to answer Doug's question. We're just doing our program planning, and I'm trying to figure out, should I just give up on the rest of on the United States when it comes to rational policy? And should I, be advising other governments, many of which still like to have facts and analysis? Or should I do what I can to make sure that the US government is not a force for evil and bad in the area of telecom policy? But there's about 4 scenarios that we've come up with already that could really spoil everything. And it wouldn't take much more than Trump doing a couple tweets. One of my fears is that he'll decide that the United States invented the domain name system for the internet, so we should take back control. As you all know, there's a very carefully constructed, multinational, multi-stakeholder nonprofit called ICANN that makes the key decisions about whether the companies that run domain names are doing their job and whether they're protecting their customers. There have been all sorts of interesting proposals. The geopolitics has inserted this. When Russia invaded Ukraine, Ukraine proposed that ICANN just unplug the .ru domain. Seems like a nice way to ruin everything for the Russians, but of course it ruins everything for people who want to get in touch with their relatives, former colleagues in Russia. So I'm rambling, but there's so many things going on in my head right now about the issues that are going the wrong way. And I'll add one more that is at the top of my list. You may have seen on Friday that the Washington Post wrote an extensive article about a leaked letter from the UK government to Apple saying, we want access to all the encrypted information in the Apple cloud for everybody everywhere. This is supposed to be secret. Apple can be punished for if they were the ones who let this out. I actually hope it's somebody within the UK government who thought it was in the national interest to leak this Snowden style. But there are a lot of other countries, including Australia, democracies for now, that think they should be able to listen in on every bit of encrypted traffic and decrypt any stored data. And so again, I'm trying to determine which of the 5 or 6 targets that I should attack, and whether it's best to do it in India or in the US or Canada, which is also going crazy. So if I'm ending on a negative note, the good news is I have access to incredible minds like the other people on this call, and Carnegie Endowment has the ability to convene some great sessions and get some good input that, again, might in this chaotic time allow us to think totally differently about how the digital future will evolve and how we can use these tools for everyone. I have just talked 10 minutes and I apologize for that. We won't talk about my social media addiction, which has gotten worse due to Blue Sky, which is actually working better than my other platforms. I'll put my email address on in the chat, so anybody who wants to tell me what they think the top priority in digital policy should be. I am most concerned right now about the personnel as opposed to the policy, because really dangerous people are trying to get some of the jobs in the Trump administration. And they might actually have enough clout and eloquence to get Trump to do some really stupid things. Thank you.
Well, I'll go next. I'm here in Vancouver, Canada for work. And early this morning, late this evening, I guess, watched the moon rise across the sky on such a crisp, cold night, as I couldn't sleep last night. And there's so much meaning in my work and life, connections, relationships, love. And yet, somatically, I grieve. Just grieving the loss of the US, of what it was, what it could have been, and thinking, what does it mean to bear witness to this horrific history unfolding before our eyes? And then reading the stories of the lives lost from the shutting down of US aid and thinking how precious life is. And thinking about how as a species we can be so beautiful, but what we're seeing before our eyes is the lowest of our species. You know, the lowest of the greed and power. And I mean, I could tell you, let's be strong and let's fight and let's do all the things. But today I'm feeling like sitting in the reality of the situation. And I don't want to get on a plane to go back to the US.
I'll follow Eve. Um, Yesterday was the first night I couldn't sleep. I just woke up 10 minutes ago because I finally got back to sleep after finally having a cup of coffee and a cracker. That being said, I'm trying to figure out how I could best be useful. I do spend a lot of time on social media. What I do want to share to encourage anybody is I went to a town indivisible organized, county-wide kind of meeting. Even before the 7 o'clock time, we had reached maximum capacity. We had people in overflow rooms, and there were later reports of people that had to go home, that there was a line down our major highway of cars, and people were walking down the highway to get there. So I just want to give that to you. Also, I had a kind of a wake up moment for myself. I had gone to see the Led Zeppelin movie with a friend, and she was in the bathroom. And while she was in the bathroom, I was reading off the OGM. Oh, no, it wasn't the OGM. I was reading off the Brennan, a different newsletter. And I was like getting like firsthand, like really quick information. So I was waiting for my friend to come out so I could share it with her. But instead, she walked out with two other women that she had just met in the bathroom. And so I kind of shut up. I let them introduce, I'm like, whatever, because I'm just waiting for them to leave. But what I realized is, and it's a behavior that needs to change, is that I'm so used to, and I'm saying but I know I'm not alone. Many people have expressed to me, we're so used to watching what we say because we don't know how the stranger on the other side is thinking. So we hold back a lot of our thoughts. And I realized after when I did that, because I didn't share it with them, I should have shared it with them too. I think we have to start speaking like, well, everybody thinks this way. So if it's something I'm outraged by, it should be, oh my God, did you hear this? Instead of worrying, oh, they might be in the other side. We have to start having these conversations with strangers in the street as if we're reasonable, the same way we would have had these conversations, not these particular conversations, but I mean, if you're standing next to a stranger and you both hear about this horrific robbery, you don't turn to them and say, oh, well, I wonder if they're for robbery. Maybe I shouldn't say anything. And, so I recognize that about me. So that's a behavior that has to change. I will share one other thing because I'm very interested in media of all kinds and AI. And this is more of a depressing fact. I had been on another call where somebody was talking about this new reality show. And the way they described it, I was so excited because I was like, yes, this will teach people and role model good behaviors and make fun of bad behaviors. And I was really excited because I was like, I would even want to play. I'm not even going to say the name of the show because it was absolutely horrible. When I went to it and watched it, aside from being bored out of my mind, but I kept watching to see if something better would happen, what it turned out to be, in my opinion, was 5 rich guys, tech bro types, who decided we're going to have fun and make this show, had the power and the money to have it made. And we're going to design it so that we can contract out for as much unnecessary technology as possible to create jobs and opportunities for our friends, which that part is very noble. And that's why I'm bringing it up. I think we make a mistake when we assume somebody's intent is negative. But just because somebody has positive intentions doesn't mean it's going to have positive outcomes. And we don't, well, I mean, we say it all the time. We're not good enough at looking at whole pictures or collective thinking to see that before it happens. So I'm saying that because as I'm going to different groups that I know have their hearts in the right place, or I wouldn't be there, I recognize that one of the things they have is this subconscious bias that technology is the way. And it really shapes the solutions that I think people come up with. So the next time you're in a room and you're listening to that, try to recognize and say, well, is there a different way we could use the technology that focuses on helping people? Because honestly, when I'm in these groups and they're using AI, that AI is taking away my fun, my natural curiosity, and it's not going to teach people to think. It's teaching people not to think. And some of you know, when it's used properly, I love it. Klaus and Kevin, they both sent me stuff which is really helpful because it dissects things and gives me a place to jump in. It untangles them. I would like AI to do the grunt work. I don't want it to, anyway, I'll stop. That's what's on my mind.
Yeah, I put my hand up because I was triggered by several things that people have said, and it triggered recent experiences. Eva, when you were speaking about your experience, I'll tell you a story about my next door neighbor who's an airline pilot for Bank of America, and he travels all over the place, and we have a very good relationship. And he loves music, and I share my political songs with him, and he likes them, except on this occasion, he said I can't listen to it. And because it was a very cutting song. and he says, I can't listen to it. And I said, are you suffering with persistent Trump stress disorder? And he said, yes. He just couldn't take it. And I haven't had a follow-up conversation with him yet, but I will. It made me much more sensitive to how people are. And I actually, the other thing I was triggered by, Stacey, what you talked about, I just came from an online Indivisible group meeting, and it was fascinating. I've been to several actually. And on the previous one I was saying that we have all these divergent ideas. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And when I spoke with Bill, who's I said, suggest, it'd be good to have a call to action, maybe at the beginning, at the end, so that people, it's a very divergent thing, but how can you get people to converge? So, so I went on the call and I put in a call to action, and shared a Substack article that was a call to action. And actually, I have to give Mike credit for this one, because a while back he was asking, well, how could we frame January 6th? And I'm advocating that it should be a national anti-insurrection holiday once there is a blue sweep, if we ever get there, so that we can, remember this diabolical cesspool of American history that we're now living through. So, I feel like I'm in a different place, because I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning with ideas and I have to put them down, trying to think, well, how can we get out of this quagmire? I mean, what is it going to take? And, we're suffering in this attention economy where we're constantly being demanded our attention. We're losing our ability, in some respects, to think properly and think through. On the other hand, AI has a phenomenal potential. And I'm reading Reid Hoffman's book at the moment on super agency. And one of the phrases he uses in his book is, he talks about bloomers. And it's the bloomers who are going to be able to flip, techno-feudalism. And this morning I started writing a song called I Am a Pleb. And I am a pleb, but we need a peasants' revolt. I haven't got very far with it yet, but that's the idea behind it. That, we need to get organized to regain sovereignty over our own attention, because we're constantly being distracted and bombarded by a slew of stuff that disables us from getting organized. So this evening I'm going to a social media group meeting. I think it's organized by, I have to look at my stuff, by Indivisible, I think it is, thinking about how can we use social media more effectively. And I'm just playing around with Blue Sky at the moment, thinking, well, how could that be used more effectively? So I'm actually feeling mildly optimistic about the groundswell that's percolating up. The question is, will it get organized? And actually, the words I said to Bill McCall, I said, can we get organized, galvanized, and synergized? Because we have to have a target. And that's the reason why I changed my LinkedIn profile to say co-create Project 2029. Because we have to deal with short-term things, intermediate things, and long-term things. And they have to be connected if we're going to have any hope of reversing the downward spiral into the immoral abyss. I'm done speaking. Thank you.
Sam, you're
muted
speaking,
again.
but we don't hear you. You lowered your hand.
Oh, yeah. I was just doing some back exercises on the ground while I was listening. I'll jump in, sorry. So, yeah, so checking in here at 4B, launched to kind of a closed beta. I mean, it's sort of semi-permeable beta. And so if anybody wants to play with it, they can. I created a video kind of for insiders, which I could share on the chat, I guess, or something. And, running into casual problems, typical closed beta problems, kind of getting a lot of little things fixed, and that's terrifying and exciting. And having some strategy meetings and doing some really interesting stuff with a couple of people. One is a friend who's big in the sort of governance DAO space, working with. We're going to create a video that kind of shows how something like this could be used in places where governance isn't working, like in emergency situations and stuff. So we're going to create kind of like a video about that. And working with another guy who's an ethicist on two projects. One is the 8 practices of good governance, which started here in this call, in a sense, and so it's evolved now. A lot of really good work going into it. So we're working on that, and we're also going to have a meeting where we're going to discuss whether I should be open or closed source, and whether I should be nonprofit or for-profit, given that the goal of 4B is to saturate the culture with the possibility of transparent, direct governance systems mediated by better technology. So, given that that's our goal, how does there are utilitarian ethics, and there are like ethics of value, like being open source is just better in some ways, and et cetera. But then if your goal is to get to a certain point or reach a certain goal, um, open an Overton window or something, then that might not be the right use, the right path. So we're going to do a really deep dive in that, and probably open it up to this. So because I think this is an important process, this ethical exploration process is something that every company should do. I think especially tech companies that have a potential to make significant impact in the fabric of society. So we're going to do some preliminary work, and then we're going to open it up to the community and we'll do like a Riverside forum where there'll be sort of the ethical landscape will be explored, and people will be able to weigh in. And I'll invite people from MetaGov and other, a variety of organizations, and including OGM. So, so there's that. So that's very exciting. Also tonight, I have another meeting with someone from Quorum One, the Hank Holiday, who's incredible, sort of open platform for work, and he's really helping me strategize about how to integrate with, Discord and Slack and other things, and how to deciding who to focus on, whether it's like community organizations or whether it's business. So we're going to have a little more strategy session there. I want to just chime in on the topic that everybody is talking about. And so I have friends, and I said this before, when I'm around left-wing people, I talk right-wing. And when I'm around right-wing people, I talk left-wing. Myself, I'm very left. But I'm in amongst a bunch of very left-wing people, and so I'm going to talk right-wing, and I apologize ahead of time. But I just did like a ChatGPT thing on, what are the likely impacts of, shutting down USAID and the Department of Government Efficiency and all that kind of stuff. And like, and it's like, and I've seen a lot of the like, oh no, the world is falling apart stuff. And I've also seen this is the greatest thing. This is needed to happen for a long time. I actively watch things from both sides. That's just how I roll. So, and there's some compelling stuff either way, and both ways. And it's like when Obama was in, I remember hearing from that group like, oh my God, he's the Antichrist, and he's gonna this he's a Muslim, and he's gonna take crazy stuff. And I feel like I'm hearing sort of the same crazy stuff a little bit from the other side. It just seems like that a little bit to me sometimes. Not always. And the places where it's not are things that I really care about. The environment, there's just no concession to the environment. There's no concession to the places where USAID is actually doing good with HIV and like famine relief and a few other things. But the other things, there are things that are really like the intention is not just to blow everything up. Like we have a $2 trillion deficit. Like we're kind of in trouble, and if we don't address that, there's going to be problems. And we all know, everybody knows the dice are loaded. Everybody knows the good guys lost, right? We know that there's corruption. There's big time wasteful spending. You talk to anybody in the Navy and they'll say, yeah, they said, just spend it all because we need to renew our contracts and just buy whatever the heck you want. Like we hear these stories. Okay. Like instead of waving our hands and saying, oh, this is all terrible, why don't we say, hey, okay, this is good. This is good. This is good. This is bad. This is bad. That should be the platform, the basis of our platform, not, oh, you are the evil empire and you're trying to destroy our planet and etc. No, like these are Americans who have opinions, and to them, the $1 trillion deficit is more important than the starving people in Ethiopia, or not Ethiopia, but wherever it is now, in Syria, or whatever it is. And so, okay, that's more important to them. It's not more important to me, but I understand that it's more important to them. So they're actually concerned about the future of the economy of the United States and how it will affect our the cost of goods and your and their pensions, blah blah blah, all that stuff with inflation. Well, okay, I understand. So let's just
Sam, you
find some
muted.
Hello? Can you hear me?
We hear you fine. Alistair had his mic off and I just muted him.
Okay. So I'm just saying, like, instead of just waving our hands, let's actually try and be rational and try and like look at what is actually happening, and there's actually some good in this, believe it or not. They're just call me crazy, but there's actually and the good thing about politics is that this guy's going to be gone in 4 years, most likely. And if there's any good that he does, maybe that'll stay. I mean, this is a good thing about democracy. I mean, is that maybe some good things will stay. Maybe he'll clear out some corruption that is undoubtedly happening, and maybe we'll be able to reorient with a better financial base and actually do some good things. And my partner's in the sector. She runs a nonprofit, the Signify Foundation. She sends $1 million of lights every year to people in the third world, and she has a very nuanced perspective on this. And she says that there's a lot of waste and a lot of like white savior stuff that just doesn't work coming out of these programs. And if there was indeed some like more care and attention put into it, and if things get shaken up and reoriented, then maybe some good can happen. And we both kind of agree that he's not, there's probably very little intention to stop this, help starving people in other parts of the world coming from Trump. But the net result of firming up the financial foundation of the United States could have long-term positive consequences. So anyway, I'm just saying it, let's just try to keep calm and try to integrate the best parts of whatever's happening. Like, just be very rational about it. That's all I'm saying. And with that, I'm out. I'm going to do my back exercise, but I'm listening.
Well, I think I'm next in line. So I'm real excited that I've been working on the racial wealth gap for about a decade, and we've raised a couple of $1 million and have a fund that solves it on a local basis and are in the county's budget. But most folks don't really care that 90% of Black-owned businesses stay under 4 employees. So I've got a project now that our anchor, Eagle Market Streets, the CDC, is working on, and it's really food sovereignty, climate resilience that also has reparations. And we'll start with the 5 red line neighborhoods. And that's really exciting to have happen, because she and I build really big things, and just turns out most folks don't really care about the racial wealth gap. But people care much more if you start with food sovereignty linked to climate resilience, hydroponics that can move to where people are sheltering. We've got a seed nursery that we're going to raise, $20,000 to fix the wiring on, that then could be the core of a lot of what we do. I'm real encouraged by it because this is a group that I've partnered with for 5 years, and we've done big things, but people actually care about the thing that we're doing now. And reparations will be the third thing. And the average white person is okay with it being there, but they really care about food sovereignty first, climate resilience second. And so and we're creating a currency around that, which will just be a way to really picture the resource flows, where you could give, where you could invest long-term patient capital and all those sorts of things. So I'm real encouraged because this is a thing that can work. Any place there's a community garden where people care and they want to be more secure in their local, hyper-local food production. And so there's lots of places like that. And Washington can go to hell as far as that goes. This works. If you assume the federal government collapses, this works. So it's resilient in a lot of different ways. And since my anchor partner says they're working up a 3 to 5 year plan, then I can dance around the edges because she's going to be there long term, and I can do what I do, figuring out new ways to tell the story. So I'm pretty jazzed about it. There's a group called Bountiful Cities. They have a network of about 20 gardens, and we're starting in the 5 red line neighborhoods. So anyway, I think we have to do things that work when the world goes to hell, and this is one of them. So that's it. Thanks.
So I'm working, with several NGOs who are operating national, and then they have chapters throughout the country. It's like Sierra Club or Climate Reality Project, is and Climate Lobby. They're represented in virtually every community, and I put in. I pop up in the national team meetings and I share my thoughts and try to help with strategy. But my focus now is shifting to local, because what these national NGOs haven't quite clocked yet is that their funding is going away because they're cutting off all the grants. So they're going to struggle. And then in order to get to money, they will have to completely compromise their mission, because where is the money supposed to come from? When you go on the local level, people are not realizing what is coming down the pipe here. The Farm Bill, for example, which is one of my key focal points, contains $182 billion for nutritional assistance programs. That is funding things like school meals, SNAP, WIC. It helps the local food banks to go and buy food that's being fed to homeless people, people in distress. That's gone. I mean, they are. I mean, I've been listening into those conversations. There's, they want to push that out to this is your local issue. Well, the communities are still in denial. I mean, they just don't. There is just not the information coming through to the local level. So I joined the local SCORE team. If you don't know what SCORE is, it's a volunteer organization that's attached to the Small Business Bureau. And the Small Business Bureau is a government-funded entity. I mean, it's also local funding and so on, but basically the same funding sources that the Small Business Bureau would have. Well, lo and behold, they just put a hiring freeze on the Small Business Bureau, and they're starting to lay off people in the Small Business Bureau. And you go, why in the world would you bring harm to the Small Business Bureau, which is a key organization to assist startup businesses to get going, right? To help them with funding, help them with all sorts of supporting tools. So that doesn't make any sense, right? So then, the more you look into what is happening with this Dodge group there and this completely off the rail guy, Elon Musk, they're just wrecking stuff. They have no plan. There is no policy behind this. There is no structure that would say we're going to shift this economy from here to there. So once all that money is cut, then and you have now tens of thousands of people who lost their jobs. Think about the impact this will have on the economy overall. The other critical thing that we are sleepwalking into is the budget that is linked with the debt ceiling. You can't do what they want to do without increasing the debt ceiling. So the Democrats are lockstep, saying we're going to let this thing go down. We are not going to agree to an increase in the debt ceiling, and there are enough Republicans on both sides actually who will agree with that position. So it's not going to work. So you're going to have a crisis coming, and if the current behavioral markers that this administration is setting are going to hold out, they're going to ignore this. They're going to create a constitutional crisis. And if the government actually does collapse or it loses its ability to pay the bills, hey, you have exactly the chaos they're looking for in order to finalize this takeover. Right. So this is really now. Maybe this is all going to bend into a different direction, but it's to me it's crystal clear. That's how Germany fell. Right. I mean, the Nazi Party got into the Reichstag, and then a short while later they burned the thing down, declared a state of emergency. And started ruling under an emergency mandate until the end of World War II. So I'm just in my head painting out, where this may lead, because you have to in order to be prepared for it. If there is something you don't want to see happen, then you have to role play what it could be, and find out what it would take to inject enough reasonable people to be alert to this and make sure it doesn't happen. But at this point in time, we're literally sleepwalking into this scenario because we're so distracted. So I'm just focusing on local now, just like Kevin. I'm reconstituting the group I used to work with a couple of years ago, where we did a workshop, where we had more than 100 people attend. The city council, county commissioner showed up, and we talked about local food, and how important it is, to have school meals organized and to protect our local farmers and all of that. And so I think that's the best thing I know how to do at this point. Is to make sure you circle the wagons and work in your own community and assist as much as you can there.
I can check in. I don't come very often. I'm Kalia Young. I just got back from Orlando, Florida, where I was for 2 days for a meeting, where DARPA is asking about what happens if the AI thing happens really fast, so we can't figure out who people are anymore online in particular, and what might they do to support understanding the difference between bots and people. So that was interesting. But the thing that really hit me was when I saw the cron in the lobby say that they were gonna DHS was gonna use the IRS to go after migrants. And that really I was like, oh, this is really bad, because that's the thing, is they sort of kept saying, like, pay your taxes, we don't care about your immigration status. And they have a lot of data there. And then it made me immediately feel like Canada had to start growing food for this summer, because there won't be any vegetables. Like, the impact on the agricultural workforce could be so bad that we're actually having food shortages. And I don't think anybody's playing that set of scenarios out either. Anyways. Yeah, I don't have a lot more to say. Pass it on.
So it's hard to know how to have this conversation, what to say and how to listen. I pay a lot of attention to mood. It's kind of a background that we live in, an orientation to the future is how I think of mood. And where I've been lately is in moods of rage and dismay and wonder. And underlying all that, thank you for naming it as grief. It's just a profound grief that I don't even recognize moment to moment, but all that's been lost, 70, 80 years of 100 years of work that's being dismantled very rapidly, and the prospects of what's to come. Dismay at just how fast this is working. Klaus, I know we're not supposed to comment, but I just have to say, Klaus, you said they have no plan. They very much have a plan. They are working their plan. They published their plan. There's somebody who's tracking the administration's actions against the Project 2025 agenda, which was, kind of poo-pooed beforehand. But there's a plan. They came in with a plan. They're working the plan as fast as they can. I'm dismayed at the cruelty. It's not something I understand in my personal experience and the people that I'm in contact with. I understand callousness, disregard, not caring about other people or the same things that other people care about. But there seems to be a willful cruelty in this game that baffles me and concerns me. Is there waste in government? Of course, and any large institution has waste in it. But what you do with that is you do forensics and you do transition plans and you do things over 60 days or 90 days or 120 days. But if you just like freeze food aid and have now apparently about $500 million of food aid sitting rotting on docks, it's been shipped, but it can't be distributed. So I'm always asking the question of who do these moves benefit? Follow the money. Who gains from the shutting down of global health information? And it's not always obvious, but there you go. So in the midst of all that, I think one of the things I hear in this call is a lot of disorientation. I see that around me all the time. The ground's been pulled out from under us, and we don't know where to go and how to move. And last night, we've been trying to cut our news diet. We're news junkies in this house. We're dialing it down and dialing it down. And last night, I just cut it off in midstream and went to Netflix and put on the Saturday night movie about the origin of Saturday Night Live, because I just needed to completely unplug from the present reality. And it was a good move. And I don't think I can do that every night because I need to stay connected in. But it was a relief and healthy for me. I admire the work that Kevin and others are doing on the front lines. I feel like I'm in a stage now where I'm more backstage than on the front lines, and focusing on conversations I'm having one-on-one with my coaching clients, in the various groups like this that I'm in online, and social media, of course, where I'm trying to bring some perspective and clarity and grounding to the conversations that I'm in. Was really struck by one last week. I've been participating for a few years in a group called Epsilon Theory, founded by a couple of guys, Ben Hunt and Rusty Gwynn, with an asset management company called Second Foundation Partners, that roots their investment strategy in watching the unfolding of narratives around the world through media around the world. What are the things that are being spoken about, the rises and falls of what has people's attention? Really interesting work, fascinating AI products that they're building. But why I bring this up here is that it was a really unusual conversation in that there were people from across the political spectrum, mostly I would call center, but left and right, left, center, and left and right. Trump supporters, Trump opponents, really different interpretations about what's going on now. And striking in how open and respectful the conversation was. I mean, people actually were able to talk and disagree and interact and build on what each other was saying, even though there's disagreement. And I was just struck by how rare that is at least in my experience of the world. And it was challenging and it was delicious, and a possibility that maybe can emerge in various places. Not so much trying to convince each other of things, because I don't think we're in an era of reason and rational persuasion right now. But something else was happening there that I really appreciated. And the other thing I'll say is that I learned yesterday that a friend of mine, someone who I very much appreciate and like and respect, is leaving the country. Not out of like rejectionism, but feeling this is a person who's a gender activist and scholar, who's feeling personally at risk, personally, physically at risk. And it's just, in the next month going to be out of here. And, it's an N equals 1, so who knows, but it really, it hit me hard. We're we were wondering a lot about our personal situation and our options. Been thinking about downsizing locally, but where do you go? I've been of the stance the last few years of thinking that I'm really concerned about other people I care about, family members who are women of reproductive age, youngsters who are going to come up into a climate world that I'm not going to see the mess of. But I realized in the last couple of weeks that we have a very direct exposure around Social Security and Medicare, which have felt pretty much off limits, but maybe not. And so I actually was, a little bit biting my fingernails this week, seeing if the Social Security payments were going to hit our bank. And they did this month. But can I count on that? Don't know. Multiply that by how many tens of millions of people? A crazy time. So that's what I got. Thank you.
So I don't know how many of you are familiar with a guy named Joe Breskin. But he posted something on Facebook, and my spidey sense is always looking for things to gain clarity on and understanding what the pattern is. And he shared Doge as a rebranded version of Rage, which is Yarvin, a guy named Yarvin. And Yarvin, in an essay in 2022, updated Rage to something he referred to as the butterfly revolution. I just want to read something. He imagined a second Trump presidency in which Trump would enable a radical government transformation. The proposal will sound familiar to anyone who's watched Musk wreak havoc. We've got to risk a full power start, a full reboot of the US government. We can only do this by giving absolute sovereignty to a single organization with roughly the powers that the Allied occupation authorities held in Japan and Germany in the fall of 45. Level of centralized emergency power worked to refound a nation then for them, so it should work now for us. The metaphor of full power start comes from Star Trek. Yarvin wrote that in the second term, Trump would appoint a different person to act as the nation's CEO. This CEO would be enabled to run roughshod over the federal government with Trump in the background as chairman of the board. The metaphors clarify the core idea: run the government as a rogue corporation rather than a public institution beholden to the rules of democracy. Trump himself will not be the brain. He will not be the CEO. He will be the chairman of the board. He will select the CEO, an experienced executive. This process, which obviously has to be televised, will be complete by his inauguration, at which the transition to the next regime will start immediately. The CEO will bring a new radical, new style of leadership to the federal government. The CEO he picks will run the executive branch without any interference from Congress or courts, probably also taking over state and local governments. Most existing important institutions, public and private, will be shut down and replaced with new and efficient systems. Trump will be monitoring this CEO's performance again on TV and can fire him if need be. Sound familiar? Yarvin continues, Trump should amass an army of people willing to staff his new regime once he wins. This magnificent army of ideologically trained and Trump-loyal ninjas will be unleashed on the federal bureaucracy. He will then throw it directly against the administrative state, not bothering with confirmed appointments, just using temporary appointments as needed. Job of this landing force is not to govern, it is to understand the government, figure out what Trump administration can actually do when it assumes full constitutional powers given to the chief executive of the executive branch. Regime must have the capacity to govern every institution it does not dismantle. Trump regime is not a barbaric sack of America's institutions. Genghis Khan is not in the building. It is a systemic renewal of America's institutions. No brand or building can survive, but the new regime must perform the real functions of the old and ideally perform them much better. Many institutions, which are necessary organs of society, will have to be destroyed. These organs will have to be replaced if they have not already been replaced in the larval stage, or even if they have. To scale, these replacements will need staff. Government isn't the only target for this hostile takeover, wrote Yarvin. Finally, it is not sufficient to have an army of parachute ninjas larger or smart to drop into all the agencies in the executive branch. Many institutions of power are outside the government proper. Ninjas will have to land on the roofs of these buildings too, mainly journalism, academia, and social media. The new regime must seize all points of power without respect for paper protections. Anything can be rationalized so long as the new regime has the staff, the prize crew, as it were, to nationalize it. Yarvin envisioned a crew of experienced and educated government workers recruited to staff the new. Musk appears to have different ideas. As Victoria Elliott of Wired reports, Musk's chief lieutenants at Doge, and he has in parentheses, destruction of government by Elon, are very young men with no experience in government. Yarvin is not alone in envisioning a massive purge of government and so forth. I really found this hugely poignant and clarifying. And taking the judgment out, taking the trauma and the shock and awe out, but just really looking at it as this moment. It really changes, at least for me, it changed my orientation and called for a wholesale blank sheet rethinking in terms of how to respond. And I'm sorry for the length of that, but I thought it was value. I'm complete.
There are a few of us who have still to check in. And I think I had a little inkling that a check-in call at this moment would be different and difficult, but I think I underestimated that. And I'm happy to hear your voices reporting in this way. And I'm glad we're sort of taking it slowly. I'll just say one thing, which is I'm just listening as hard as I can for what the appropriate responses are and trying to make room there for what the situation actually is. And Doug, the quote you just read from fits a bunch of stuff I've been gathering up about. Yep, this is an attempt to sort of field strip and then rebuild. This taken in relatively good faith. This is a relatively brusque and almost and often cruel attempt to field strip the current machine and rebuild something that might work better based on a lot of assumptions about a lot of sort of belief systems about who is more effective, what works better, et cetera, et cetera. And these are, in fact, the titanic battles of politics and power. But I'm listening with care for what is the most productive, suitable, humane way to participate at this moment. I'm not clear. I'm still collecting that information, still trying to figure that out. And anyone who has models for this, suggestions for this, please put them on the OGM list, send them to me, whatever else you want to do. But I think it's unclear when ninjas are in the house with long knives slitting the aortas of organizations we have heard about our whole lives, and we think that a lot of people around the world rely on in different ways, which is true, because any organization that's been doing something in the world that people count on is in fact relied on. So when those institutions are sort of lying bleeding on the ground, it's really hard to figure out what the appropriate response is. And I think everybody progressive was unprepared for the speed and violence of these actions. And I think the speed and violence of these actions is a result of a first Trump administration that seemed really ineffectual, that did not make as big a dent on, it made a dent on our psyches, but not on the machine the way Reagan did. Reagan made huge changes in how government works, enormous changes that we're still sort of living through. And so I think a bunch of people said, no, Trump 2 is going to be different and better from their perspective. And these first 100 days are, I think very much proof that they had a plan, they showed up, and they're busy at work doing this thing. So what are the right responses? And with that, I'm complete.
I'm just finding this very disheartening. It's amplifying the depression that I was already experiencing. And I'm having trouble figuring out how to shift into any sort of constructive mode.
We can go there when we're done checking in, Judy. I'm with you.
Well, I can do a quick check-in. It's mundane. It's not going to be profound at all. I spent the last 2 days having my furnace replaced because I woke up 2 days ago with the temperature 63 in the house. So that occupied a fair bit of my energy for the 2 days. First, to get someone to come look at it, and then for them to say it's fatally ill. We'll come tomorrow and put in a new furnace, which then took the whole day yesterday to put the furnace in. Well, not the whole day, but from 8 until 3:30. And it's very nice to have heat when the outside temperature is basically 0 in Minnesota. Luckily, the house is relatively well insulated. On top of that, the other part of my check-in is I'm still looking at moving to be closer to my daughter, and there's all sorts of moving parts to deal with that in terms of the pragmatics and what to keep and what not to keep, and what's my strategy for meeting new people and making new friends in a state that I've never spent much time in except in high school. And I wish she lived in almost any other state than Texas, but that's where she lives.
So in the summer of 1986, my father was dying of lung cancer. It was a very painful death to witness. He went from 170 pounds down to 115 pounds. And I can remember him coughing, being driven to his knees and blood coming out of his mouth, and then looking up and saying, I can't take much more of this. And it was really freaking me out. I didn't know how to handle it. And I got into therapy, and my therapist said, you should consider going to Al-Anon. I said, what's Al-Anon? She said, it's for the families of alcoholics, because my dad had a big drinking problem. And that's where I encountered the serenity prayer of God grant me the, what is it? The serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I found myself going back to that a lot right now, because there's things going on here that I cannot change. I have no influence or power or ability or leverage to change or cope with what's going on in Washington right now. And so I keep letting that go, and letting that go, and letting that go, and not focusing on it. Now, I read Heather Cox Richardson every day, which is about as much news as I can stand, because anything more than that drives me into depression. I am not in denial. I know I've read about both Project 2025 and Agenda 47. I know there is a very well thought out, carefully thought out plan. I know a lot of liberal people or progressive people are saying, oh, next election. There may not be a next election. I don't know. I think they're missing the fact that this is this is the fruition of 50 plus years of planning, going back to the Powell memo. This is a very, very long, they've been playing the long game, and people don't realize that. They think, oh, it's just a blip. It's not. It's an enormous churn. And if I focus on all the analysis and all the predictions of how dire it's going to be, then I find myself unable to actually get through my day. I can't. It's too overwhelming. So knowing all that stuff's going on and keeping a firm boundary of I'm not letting it impinge too much on my consciousness, because it's not something I can do anything about. What I can do is talk with my friends, listen, encourage them to turn off the news, get off social media, which is very, very toxic right now, and attend to their own mood. I do not want to spend the next bit of time, however long it's going to be, while we're going through hell. If anybody saw my piece in the Plex last week, we're in hell and it's getting bigger. I don't want to be in a reactive, demonizing, dehumanizing mode of, look, those people, look what terrible things they're doing. I'm going to live my life as fiercely and fully as I can, loving the people that I love and taking care of what I can take care of. And when the moment comes along, when there's an opening, when there's something I can actually lend myself to, I will do that. But right now, I don't see that. I don't see anything that is a place where I can add my whatever I have that's going to be effective. So, and I'm not actually looking for it either right now. I think things are going to have to get so bad that enough people will say enough is enough. Now, I kind of lost my faith in human nature after the election, because I really thought we would choose the right thing, and I don't think we did. As one meme said, congratulations, America. No, there are two roads diverged in a wood. Two paths diverged in a wood. Congratulations, America, you chose the psychopath, right? And so that's the big karma for the nation right now and for the world right now. And someone spoke about grief earlier. I have tremendous grief for what's going on. That's the other side, is not just the anger and the outrage, but the grief of the suffering that's being unleashed, the grief of having lost in my lifetime 70% of mammals. That's such a destruction of billions of years of evolutionary genius and intelligence being wiped off the face of the planet. I've been reading this book called Down to Earth by Bruno Latour, and I actually see that ground is rushing up at us very fast. Human beings are about to come down to earth in a really hard way, because we're going to learn that you can't ignore Gaia. Gaia is an active agent in the change going on right now. And sure, you can write it out of your policies and say no mention of climate change or all this stuff, but that doesn't change the reality. So I think we're going to come down to earth in a hurry, and it's probably going to be a hard landing. And I don't know exactly how to prepare for that, but I know that immersing myself in media and feeling, and especially disappointed in major media outlets, which are normalizing the behavior instead of calling out what's going on. They're like, oh, well, here's what's happening. It's like, Jesus, freaking Christ, I can't believe this, you know? So, so I'm just kind of very aware of all that's going on and doing what I can to keep myself sane, to keep my nervous system regulated so that I'm able to, you know, get up and function and do what needs to be done. And there just aren't a lot of powdered milk biscuits left on the shelf right now. So that's where I am.
But at least you're in OGM land and all their men are handsome, the women, how does this go? And all the children are above
All
average?
the women are handsome, all the men, no, all the women are good looking, all the men are, I can't remember. It's been so long since
Oh,
I
we're
was.
good. We'll get it.
All
We'll
the
get it. We'll
men
get it.
all the men are strong, all the women are good looking, and all the women are above average.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you.
it. Thank you.
Then I'll just
Really?
live now because that's not appealing to me one bit.
Prairie
just
home
echoing.
companion.
Very
Well,
home companion.
Stacy, they took him off the air, so you don't have to worry.
Yeah.
Ken, thank you. I think everybody's checked in. We have 8 minutes of general salon style conversation left. Ken, I'm hoping you might have a poem for us at the end of that. Stacy, you have your hand up.
Yes, I do. Just going after what Ken just said. Well, first, I want to just put that link in. That's a link to the ethics hearing that Marjorie Taylor Greene actually chairs. And I put that there because I know most people here don't want to deal with the low information people, but social media is such a big deal. And we know that that's a tool of the other side. So for me, that's exactly where I want to be. So I put that clip there because any low information, not somebody who's totally tied to a party person would look at that. And if you ask the question, if if the ethics committee is about Doge, why isn't Elon Musk there? That would be a very reasonable question to wonder. And the way there's just lots of things in that little clip that I think speak to what Sam was talking about in terms of trying not to be overreactive. Because I do agree to a point, not quite to the point that he was speaking of, because I feel like there's some nuances that he is missing too, because it's not that many people would go along with the idea of breaking down institutions to rebuild them and the idea that you got to do it smart. The difference is you have to trust the people leading it. And there's plenty out there to help us to not trust. From a social media standpoint, I could tell you that I see it happening. There is concern that Trump and Musk are going to butt heads. And I already see the attempt from the other side to be behind Elon and to make sure that there isn't a rift. And yesterday I'm kind of friendly with this national celebrity that knows a lot of the people in my town. We hang out for music. And as a joke, and I don't think other people realized it was a joke, he said something snarky about little X, Elon's son. And because now I immediately had a little clip because I took a video of Elon being fact checked, where he admits that the condoms, that's wrong. And he admits that not everything he says is going to be true. But I wanted people to look at Trump's reaction. So that's why I put it up there. That's what I was talking about. But somebody else started kind of ganging up on this little 4-year-old adorable kid, which will not reflect well on the left. And they put up a TikTok video where he supposedly says something. I'm not even going to repeat it. I do not believe that he said it. I went further into this story with other clips elsewhere. And it seems to me that the kid is really well behaved, and it didn't make sense that he would see this. I did make a joke about the boogers on the desk, stuff like that, which I don't think he did. I had said that as a joke. And then later I saw it on social media reporting he put boogers on Trump's desk. I don't mean to ramble, but the point is the little things we can do happen, I think, on social media. And Gil, you'll tell me when you go, but I don't know if you realize that you actually helped me when you asked some questions. I had put up a 5-page document on my page because I wanted to get under the Tax Data Protection Act. And I wanted to, again, for low information voters, hear any kind of objection to it. Because by that way, you could weed out who's just like identity politics and who's just learning. And a friend that Kalia probably knows, I mean, he's somebody that is a very, very smart man, and we're friendly. And I know he's more libertarian, and he would definitely be more toward, he would be probably supporting Elon and Trump, was engaging with me. But the fact that Gil made a comment, which I don't think you did it purposely, but to allow me to continue the discussion without looking like I'm just being like rah, rah, is very helpful to me, because that's what I try to do. I try to, throw out these discussions. You helped me on Jim Rutt's page when I went back at him because he didn't post the whole thing. And by the way, he never responded to your comment. But again, I think that socially, I'm not saying this is what you should dedicate your life to, but I don't think I think that we should realize we can play a role. I wish we were a little bit more organized in the strategy that we used when we are on Facebook. And I'm talking specifically about Facebook because it's a different environment from everything else. And people do have relationships there, real life relationships, even if it's only been through Zoom calls. And who says something does make a difference, and how somebody reacts does make a difference. All those things paint the picture. And that's something that Trump and the media understand that I don't think we get so much. And the last thing I'll say is, how many of you are aware that I think thousands of people were laid off at Meta? And they're going to be rehiring, though. But that's the case. It's not just that they laid off because they're making cuts. They laid off a whole bunch of people with the intention of rehiring. And as I read further into it, these were people that had previously gotten good reviews. So there's a lot of stuff going on. And I just try to keep pointing out, it's the people, like the individual people. You have to have some trust in the people. And if Elon Musk can't show up at the ethics committee, oh, and by the way, in that clip, only one person on the panel was truthful in saying when they were asked if a certain IG was fired because or a certain IG that was investigating Elon's company was fired. Every person said, I don't know, except for the last person. As far as I'm concerned, I'll listen to what the last person has to say. I don't care what the other people have to say because they've proven themselves to be liars. And thank you for letting me rant, because I'm getting snarky on Facebook and I don't like it. My dark side's coming out. I'm being a little nasty.
Ooh, Dark Stacy, crazy. Gil, you'll have the penultimate word here.
Penultimate. Stacy, I'm glad that whatever I said was helpful. I don't know what it was. I know that one of the things I've been doing on social media is asking people for citations for the things they claim.
That's great.
Which seems to be a major disease on social media. So that's one little thing that I do. I'm glad that it has benefit. I'm concerned that you are trapped in the notion of reasonableness and rational and persuasion and logic. I don't think that's where the game is right now, but that's just me.
On social media.
Anywhere. It's not it. Just two things. Who was it? Somebody, Doug, when you're reading Yarvin, and if you could send us that link, that'd be really great. Have we lost him?
Please. Doug had to get off the call.
I'd love to see that link. But Yarvin is running this rant that we hear from these folks about the authoritarian CEO. Be like a CEO, run the government like a business, have a CEO who's completely in charge, and what he says goes. That's not how most companies work. Most companies don't have authoritarian CEOs. They have strong leaders, various kinds of leaders, but they are collaborative leadership of many people. And these guys don't know that. And they also talk about, it was hilarious to see Zuckerberg talking about masculinity. And these guys have a myth of a John Wayne kind of masculinity. You know, the fierce, tough, take no prisoners as the quality of masculinity, but also through history, one of the qualities of masculinity is protection and care. And they don't seem to get that piece. Kara Swisher had a terrific rant last week about Musk and about the psychopathy of these folks and the revenge of the nerds of guys who were bullied in high school, who were not strong men, who picked up this myth of what a strong man is and are trying to run it out. And unfortunately, they've got the reins at the moment. Last I'll say, and then Ken, over to you. Ro Khanna, congressman from Silicon Valley, had a wonderful piece in the Times this morning. I'm posting a gift link in the chat. The alternative to Trump cannot be the defense of institutions as they are. So he's saying, you know, if the Democrats are just trying to defend what was without listening to what the upset is in the country and what the breakdown and failure is and what's a better strategy, you know, it's a different. Anyway, I'll leave it to you guys to read it if you're interested. Thank you all.
Thanks, Gil. I will point out that we're getting our first snow of the season today, and it's flurrying outside and very beautiful. Ken, over to you.
Back to Lewis Jenkins. It's called regret. There's no use in regret. You can't change anything. Your mother died unhappy with the way you turned out. You and your father were not on speaking terms when he died, and you left your wife for no good reason. Well, it's past. You may as well regret missing out on the conquest of Mexico. That would have been just your kind of thing back when you were 18. A bunch of murderous Spaniards out to destroy a culture and get rich. On the other hand, the Aztecs were no great shakes either. It's hard to know whom to root for in this situation. The Aztecs thought they had to sacrifice lots of people to keep the sun coming up every day. And it worked. The sun rose every day. But it was back-breaking labor, all that sacrificing. The priests had to call in the royal family to help, and their neighbors, the gardener, the cooks. You can see how this is going to end. You're going to have to get bloody. You're going to have to get your bloody, beating heart ripped out. But you're going to have to stand in line in the hot sun for hours, waiting your turn.
Ooh-wee. It's not a mood lifter, but it was beautiful.
Lovely note to end on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Okay.
Gil. If you can find the Kara on Musk link and put it on the OGM list, I would appreciate
I
that.
will. There's a lot of her talking about him. I'll try to find the one I'm speaking about because it was distinctive.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody. This was a hard but lovely call, and I'm
Thank you,
very
everyone.
happy.
Won't be the
Very
last.
happy that we convene here.
Won't be the last. It's hard and lovely, I predict.
Yeah, same here.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.